Last week, the Prime Minister said CSL would be producing 1 million doses of the vaccine a week, and that was from Monday. Has that happened?
Well, I think in week one we're running in excess of 800,000 is what I heard in the last couple of days. I haven't had an update recently, but that's a very impressive start for week one of domestic production. And domestic production is really the lifesaver for Australia here. It certainly justifies the decisions that were taken last year to invest in the CSL facility, to provide them with the support and capacity and contracts.
And that's great.
What I've seen reported, we're one of only about 13.
Sure, but we've only seen 400,000 vaccines actually be administered and go into people's arms. The slow vaccine rollout threatens our economic recovery, does it not?
Laura, if we actually are seeing more than 800,000 headed towards 1 million doses produced domestically each and every week from here on in Australia, then that's the game changer for vaccine rollout in our country. And by some reports, we're one of only about 13 countries in the world in a position to manufacture their own vaccines. So
but the US
we're in a very fortunate position.
100 million doses that have actually been rolled out. 100 million. We are a fraction of that.
And the US started with the manufacturing capability. They rushed, obviously, through emergency procedures around safety. We gave Australians the surety that we went through the normal processes of the Therapeutic Goods Administration to get the approvals there. So everybody in Australia can have confidence. We're in a much more fortunate position than the US or Europe or most other parts of the world, both in having not only the potential to manufacture vaccines here, but also not having the emergency crisis pandemic situation of overflowing hospitals, crisis health systems, more lockdowns and shutdowns that are happening in parts of Europe. So we've been able to go through the right process, but I think people will see the numbers exponentially increasing over coming weeks as we now have that surety of domestic supply that can be distributed across Australia and allow us to open up from what has been a highly targeted vaccine rollout in the first few weeks, targeted to those frontline health workers, quarantine workers, those most vulnerable, to ultimately now starting to reach into a period where all older Australians are eligible, and pretty soon, it won't take long before we get to the stage where all Australians are eligible for the vaccine.
Well, just finally on the economy, there's some good data around today. Job seeker payments are down by 4.4 billion since what you expected in MyEFO. Are you redirecting that money or are you banking it?
So it's really good news today to see that the year-to-date budget position to the end of February is $23 billion better than what the government had expected. But we do need to remember it's still a $134 billion deficit in year-to-date terms, and that is an enormous deficit in anybody's language. It's the biggest deficit in the nation's peacetime history as a share of the economy. And so we want the deficit to be as small as possible, while doing whatever is necessary to support the continued economic recovery. And it is the fact that 300,000 people have come off of JobSeeker in recent months, which means we've got lower social welfare costs, more Australians in work and therefore more Australian taxpayers, creating the circumstance that generates that improved budget position. And that's certainly where our focus continues to be. How do we keep that jobs growth going that has already got us back to the point where there are more Australians in work now on the last employment figures than there were in March of 2020. That's something that pretty much nobody else in the world in developed economies has managed to succeed in doing, and getting their employment and economy to recover to that level. But the targeted support announced today for cinemas, yesterday for arts and entertainment, the other week for tourism and aviation, all of that is showing that we're keeping a firm eye on those sectors doing it tough as we transition past JobKeeper into that more targeted assistance program.
Simon Birmingham, thank you.
Thanks, Laura.